Tom, welcome to Visualize Value Office Hours, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Absolute pleasure to be here. I've been watching from afar for a while.
Pleasure to have you, mate. So, the objective of today, I'm going to ask you questions from my level of understanding of no code, which is almost zero. So, the way I'm thinking about this is, if someone was exposed to this conversation for the first time, how can we take them from a 0 to 1 in their understanding of no code? So I think to start, a bit of context on who you are, and then I think go into Makerpad and what you guys are building over there, and then we'll get into some more specifics about the practice of no code itself.
Sure. So my name's Tom. I work for a company called Makerpad, and we basically teach people how to build software and apps without writing code. So previously, it would just be building apps without writing code, but now things have kind of kicked on a little bit. So you can actually produce and build software without writing code. So that's the slogan. We've got upwards of 4,000 members so far, push hopefully hitting 5,000 before the end of the year. Full credit goes to Ben Tossell, the founder of Makerpad, who's been beating this drum for a while, since the product hunt days. So yeah, he's done an absolutely incredible job of basically creating no code as an entity out of nowhere, pretty much, because it wasn't a thing before he started talking about it. So yeah, definitely recommend chatting to him as well, because he is the OG of the scene. So I work
Awesome.
for Makerpad, been doing it since last September. I work on the education side, so produce all the tutorials, host the workshops, do the podcast. I think we've done over 100 tutorials building stuff without code and 50 workshops or so. So got a pretty good grasp on things like tooling, etc. And yeah, we're just doing our thing, just trying to bring more people into the space, show people what's possible. I think that's like the most important thing, like you said, just getting from that 0 to 1 understanding, and then yeah, just rolling with it. It's going pretty well so far.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So my layman understanding of no code and the experimentation that I've done has been, I forget which applications that I've used. Bubble maybe was one of them.
Yep.
But I've kind of, I think your point about what's possible is how you bring people into the space, right? I think there's this gap that exists between if I learn to code, I can build anything. And then if I learn no code, I can get, I don't know, 80, 90% of the way there. So how do you guys like phrase or frame up like what no code, what capability no code gives you as a creator, and what the advantages are in jumping into that versus, the deep end of the pool, which maybe,
Mm.
just writing lines of code in a terminal or something.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of touches on so many interesting like discussion topics, because like the first thing you mentioned about like getting 80% or 90% of the way there, like in life, 80 to 90% of the way there quickly is the game. If you can do that, like you've almost won. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing. So no code in a way like enables that. Like do you really need that extra 10 or 20% to make it perfect? Like most of the time not. Like some of the time, yeah, of course, but most of the time not. So what no code enables you to do is enables you to take an idea and create something without needing to code in a fraction of the time it would take even for a developer to hand code the thing itself. But this is good not only for like non-technical people, but it's good for developers as well, because if you put no code tools in the hand of a developer, it's like them hunting a rabbit with a bazooka. It's
Right,
like,
right.
oh my god, they've built this thing in like 5 minutes, and they've added all this custom functionality which they couldn't, which a non-technical person couldn't do. So actually, like weirdly, like enables two sets of people. But yeah, some people get funny about that, code thing, which we can discuss afterwards. So one, it empowers people to do things quickly. Two, it kind of takes like this the fear and the stigma away from actually like creating software, because like before now it was, oh, I need to learn how to code and need to be a developer, I need to go through a boot camp, I need to do like all this, get like credentials, or take out a bank loan of 20 grand to pay a developer to build my thing. This All these new no code tools and older no code tools, because Bubble's been around for ages, just enable that that stigma to be removed, that fear to be removed, and you can just start building and start iterating on whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yes. And obviously, it's an attractive proposition for a lot of people, given the growth of Makerpad as a business, too. So, in kind of delivering that curriculum, what where do people normally enter your ecosystem? It's like, I have an idea and I want to build it, or I want to learn no code, and then it helps me look at the world in a way where I can kind of spot different opportunity. Just curious for like, also just who is the most successful, like what mentality gels the best with learning no code from scratch? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, you've got like a real mix of people, and it started off with one group of people and it's kind of merging with other groups now, especially as the toolings got better. So it would start off with like the entrepreneur types who have their dream app idea and they want to just know how to build it, and then you can go ahead and build it. That was the first group of people. So the way that Makerpad started, and obviously Ben done like a really good job of like shaping this whole thing, was how to build Airbnb without code. I think this is one of his first tutorials.
Got it.
So people were like, oh, I would love to build an Airbnb. I want to build an Airbnb for this, or build like an Instagram clone. This is how the whole thing got started. And there is people still trying to build like the marketplaces, and sites like that. But now we're seeing more people come in from like business backgrounds. So we're seeing like project management people come in. We're seeing enterprise like sales consultants come in to be able to like build like custom functionality or apps to help them with their own jobs. So people who are already full-time employed, they want to be able to like supplement what they already do with tools. So it's a real mix, and it's kind of like crossed the divide between a few groups.
And that's like a transition that's happened with time, right? Like the barrier to entry is kind of lowering. Like I don't necessarily, I'm not attracted to this. I'm trying to build $1 billion business necessarily. I just want this like more functional thing within my organization, or I want to build something that makes my job easier. So I think the spectrum of it sounds like is widening, right? And just attracting different types of people with different goals.
Yeah, that the floor's like gone right down, so it's easier for anybody to launch anything. And actually, yeah, some people do want to build $1 billion business, but what this has enabled people to do is to go to like VCs with a working app, like an MVP, like a version 1, and just say, look, this is what I've built on my own with no technical skills. And they're like, well, you've already built this and you don't know how to code? It's like surprising people. So that's really interesting. But also like the ceiling has gone up. So as tools are getting more advanced, it was started off with say like websites and Dreamweaver back in the day, and then you've got like Shopify, which you can now launch e-commerce stores. But now you've got like more like data plays like Parabola. You can have the same capability of like a data scientist, or you can use something like obviously AI, which gives you machine learning and prediction modeling capabilities. So you can, as a single person who's like non-technical, you've got like all these weapons in your arsenal which kind of pull from different independent job functions, so you can really get like quite a long way on your own, like whatever it is you're trying to build, whether you're starting a new project or you're working internally for a company anyway.
Yeah, and this is how this is how this conversation came about, was kind of a meta reference to no code in itself, right? It's like, how do you automate the functions in your business? And I think a lot of people, me included, are using you're giving instructions to software all the time, and this extra step of kind of building a interface on top of that, or maybe an interface is not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to have an interface to be considered no code. But I think the gap potentially isn't as big as a lot of people think it is, and there's a lot of logic that you're already employing, borrowing code and using code behind the scenes to accomplish things in your business as is. So that leads me into my next question. What if you've probably seen this evolve over time, but the misconceptions people hold around no code, there's obviously the super technical people that are kind of talking their book, right? It's never going to be able to do this. But what do you commonly hear as like, objections to no code, the movement itself?
So like the most common objection is that like no code is just for like MVPs. But even like that comment like completely misses the point, because that's just assuming that people are just using no code tools to launch like really primitive products, and that's all they'll ever be. But like, one, they're missing the point because everything starts with the version 1. And if you looked at something that was hand coded for the version 1, that would equally be as basic as something that's built without code. Like, everything starts crap. Like, let's be honest. So like, the first version of anything isn't very good. But also that's taking into account that everybody's just using no code to launch businesses and projects. But that's not the case anymore. You use it, people across all job functions, entrepreneurs, creators, they're not actually creating sometimes a physical app that you see. Sometimes people are just leveraging like the automation tools to tie in together like your stack with, maybe you have like a membership site and you have a sign up form, and you just want to auto enroll these people without having to copy and paste their email addresses. It could be simple as that. That's like technically a no code solution. So people were saying, oh, it's just for MVPs. It's kind of like, oh, shut up. So boring. It's like, we're not just trying to like build simple apps all the time. It's everything. It's moving data between your existing stack. It's like automating manual processes. It might be landing pages, it might be websites, it might be mobile apps, but it might be like internal mobile apps which just serve a function in like a corporate setting. So it could be like a mobile app which just shows you who's on annual leave. So this isn't like it's not always like a B2C big scale like Instagram app. So, which I think is like the misconception where people are just thinking that's all people are trying to do is build these like these billion-dollar photo sharing apps without code. It's just not true.
Yeah, and I think that I think every sort of new thing struggles with that. You know, you have the first definition of the word or the first association with the word, and it becomes really difficult to divorce that association over time. But it does fascinate me because the I don't know, the connotation might even stop you from exploring it, even if if you have that association in your head. It's like, well, I don't want to build a janky MVP, so no code is not for me. It's kind of like saying the internet is not for me, right? It's like a crazy statement. Yeah.
And also there's another one where people have this like issue of scale in their head, where they've got this idea which they think is going to have like 10 million users.
Of course,
cool story, like whatever. Okay, like it's great, like it's good to be ambitious, but like if you want 10 million users, you're gonna have to start with one user, and the first user doesn't care if your back end isn't capable of handling 10 million users on your site at once. Shut up, get over yourself and just start building it. Like, come on.
But that's a great observation too. Common.
And what's interesting as well, from like a tooling standpoint, the longer this argument goes on, the better the tooling gets. So like Bubble uses like AWS as like a backend. So if your Bubble app starts getting overloaded with users, they just like upgrade your servers. Like it's not an issue. Or you have like solutions which are like backend as a service. So rather than being like locked into a platform, you can build your backend in something like Superbase, which is like an open source backend as a service. So you can have something like 8base, which serves up a bit technical, but like a GraphQL backend, which is if you built in either of these platforms and handed it off to a dev team, like once you hit scale and you can hire developers, they're just gonna be like, dude, this is awesome. We can just work with this and like serve it up in a different way. So tooling's getting way more advanced. So it puts that to bed.
There's so many good analogies. I actually went and bought a Christmas tree yesterday, and the guy's saw broke, and he was doing it with a hand saw. It's like the same idea, right? It's like you're getting the same job done, but you're choosing to use the tool that is like less efficient, take you a lot more effort, and gets you like a dodgier cut. So it's there's some interesting analogies.
I've never heard that one before, but I like it.
I think even this conversation is making me think about, like widen the definition of it, and there's a lot more applications for it. So you have the misconceptions of like the existing way apps and like direct to consumer products are built. How within the curriculum at Makerpad, what like resonates the most with people? Like, what are the light bulb moments that kind of go off as people are getting educated about the space? Like those little epiphanies, I'm super interested in. Like, oh, once I understood this, now I'm like, you know, a disciple of no code.
Yeah, so I think there's probably two. There's loads, obviously, but I think the two which are the biggest is one, like turning a Google spreadsheet of information into a mobile app in like 5 minutes. That's always the best one. That's using
Right.
something like Glide, which is a great starting point. And just like, I've got this on my phone, which I built in 5 minutes. This is ridiculous. And then you kind of like, okay, what else can I do? That's great. The second one is like the automation piece. This is like where I get like really excited because I'm probably on the other side to you, Jack, where you're the creative, like visually, you do like some incredible designs. I'm like that, but behind the scenes, like digital, like plumbing and stuff, and I work with like creators, some of which who they have like all this amazing like creative work. Maybe like they're writers, they like do all this
Mm-hmm.
amazing stuff. But then you look behind the scenes, and you're like, whoa, your
Yeah.
processes like are brutal. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're manually enrolling these people in these courses and then manually emailing them. Like, so that's like my bread and butter. So I love all this automation piece because this again, is like probably a different version of your like build once, sell twice. It's like do twice, automate once, and then like
Yeah.
you never
Nice.
have to do it like ever again, which is amazing, especially for like a lazy person. So the automation piece, the first time somebody ties two applications together with something like Zapier, like Integromat, something like that, is like an aha moment. You're like, someone filled in this form and it automatically got added to my like CRM with a tag and then sent someone a reminder in Slack. Like, what is this witchcraft?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And that's how this conversation came about. So it would be cool to dig into, I think you said 130 automations that run Makerpad. And I think what's like fascinating about that is like the inception of no code, right? It's like a no code business that practices what it preaches, and there are all these layers underneath it. So can you talk about some of the, I think just that overall architecture of like the no code that runs Makerpad?
Yeah. So again, like shout out 100% credit to Ben for building like Makerpad from the ground up without code. Like the entirety of Makerpad, if you go to makerpad.co, it runs without code. So it's built on Webflow, it's built on Airtable, Zapier, MemberStack for memberships, and Circle for the community. And everything that can be automated is automated. So everyone from signing up and paying your membership through MemberStack then goes through to, you get the automatic email which goes out through Zapier, you get added to Airtable with the appropriate tags, you get like created as a record in Circle, so you get enrolled to the community, you get like another email how to do your introduction. The Stripe billing goes through and it generates like an invoice and adds like to the accounting software, all this good stuff. And then you have the automations that like tie together all of the systems. So if you have like user generated content in Webflow, if someone posts like a new project, then
Mm-hmm.
that adds them back to their profile. And there's like everywhere, anything that happens on Makerpad is pretty much automated, sometimes like to the detriment where we think, okay, we should probably just use a human for this because it's
Right,
quite
right.
tough. But yeah, there's loads, like creating like images, like share images that are like your OG image, which when you share a link on Twitter, it has like a nice custom image, like there can be auto generated without code. Um, Things like if someone does like a boot camp and they're going through a self-serve boot camp and they complete one of the projects, then once they press complete and submit it through a form and we approve it, then that automatically generates like a certificate in Google Slides and adds their name in and their signature,
That's cool.
and they get emailed it, so they've completed it and they've got a certificate. That's all things that would usually take loads of time, but just runs automatically. So you could probably go on for hours talking about each one, but I think probably the most valuable ones are stuff in like onboarding.
Yeah.
Stuff in onboarding and like notifications about what's going on like in the community and like the circle channels, when people post stuff or when people mention your brand, you want to know about it. Nice stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious about the stage at which, and this may be different for the Makerpad community specifically, but the stage at which people automate things, because there's this kind of tension between building and validating an idea as quickly as you possibly can. And in some cases, building that automation is going to help you get there faster. In other cases, it's kind of the excuse you use to say, I'm going to build the thing first, and then I'm going to try and get somebody to use it, right?
Yeah. So I think I like the analogy where if you're doing anything over and over again, you're thinking, okay, this should be automated. So if you're taking information from one place and just putting it in another, that's like a prime example of something that should be automated. Maybe if you get a sale or you get like a lead through, or somebody signs up for something and then you have to take that information and put it into another system, then that should definitely be automated. No one should spend their life taking information from one system and copy and pasting it into another system. It's just
Right.
not, that's just not the work that humans were evolved to do. So thank God for computers. But then there's things like the personal touches, which can be over automated, and they can seem, and once people know they're automated as well, that's like a fine line between, you know, when you get like the email which says, hey, first name in brackets,
Right.
like, fuck.
Yeah.
Don't
These guys.
just don't do that. Just don't do first name. Like just say hey, because you just, now you know, they're just sending out loads of like automated stuff. Or you go to like LinkedIn, you say, hey, I'm looking to grow my network. Like just don't do that, because everyone knows it's automated.
Yeah.
So like personal stuff, like community stuff, I think should always be done, just so because you can, you know, that the language of how you write. So yeah, you can definitely over automate. I think if it's like behind the scenes passing information, like all that should be done. Like you shouldn't be doing that yourself, just because not only is it boring, but you're prone to mistakes. Like how many times have people like missed out numbers inputting like a sale from one system to another, or like forgetting to send an email out once something happens. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, I can't remember who said this, but I read probably a tweet that said, if you can write a job description for it, then eventually somebody's going to automate it. So I like the analogy of, hey, if you're going to do these things in order to buy yourself time to do the more human stuff, right? I think you're totally right that the time with the customer is what's going to generate the insight to make the product better. And then you kind of transition those learnings into the logic that you write, as opposed to trying to extract that with the logic that just ends up in people being like, what is this robot trying to ask me or say to me?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you should always like go through the process at least like a few times, so you can figure out what you can automate, and also just try to automate like the smallest thing like possible to start with. Don't try and automate like the whole thing. Like don't try and tie together like 5 or 6 systems like straight off the bat, and just turn on the zap and hope it goes through, because yeah, you just spend forever debugging it. So a good example of this is something I've just gone through getting the house, is submitting like searches. Like buying a house in the UK is brutal.
I've heard,
It's like pulling teeth. It's so painful. Everything is manual. Everything is like an old deed signed. So yeah, if you're looking to get automation work as well, and you want to do something good, please help in the UK with estate agents and solicitors putting out there.
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with a few people, but the like dogmatic view of what a software business is, I think prevents people from discovering tools like this, right? It's like, unless I am a pure software play, why would I look at a solution like this? So you're either building an app or you're not. But what I think is interesting about this space is even if you're, hand commissioning portraits of someone's dog, then there's like a layer of automations that can sit beneath that can, get you to draw 3 more dogs a week, right? Like, this is a silly example, but I think it's that misconception that no code is like, just a different way to build an app is what I think is holding a lot of people back from seeing the benefits of it. And this is my reaction to like using Zapier for Zapier, I heard you say, which makes sense. Zapier.
Zapier rhymes with happy. I remember that one.
Nice. Yeah. So that, like, even just being exposed to that for like, making 3 or 4 of those, I'm like, man, if I was, if you spent a day or 2 days or really like dug into what could be done here and like examine how your day runs without these things, just like one tiny example, I have a Zap that takes a image tweet from Visualize Value and just takes it, strips the URL out of it and posts it on a Facebook fan page. And that page just grows and grows and grows and grows. And that thing's just been set up once. It's bonkers. Like, spent 20 minutes to do that. And the reach that it extends is crazy. And I'm like the most amateur, like, look at the like shiny icons, be like, I've got that and that. Let me see what it suggests,
Also, you're buying time back. This is what I love about this whole time thing. Everything you do, whether it's for yourself, like a project or a client, you're giving them time. So there's a really interesting cost model which trying to work out, and there are agencies that just do automating work for small to medium-sized businesses. This is what I think is the absolute goldmine, because I think everyone wants to target like the Fortune 500 company, but there's only like a few of those. Like, and let's be honest, they're a pain in the ass.
Their
But like
procurement
for every
process
one Fortune
is outrageous too.
Like, maybe it's slightly different if you're working with like your stuff, you're doing like big ticket, like creative work, and you're getting like a whole suite of things to do over like a long contract. But for every one like Fortune 500 company, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of small to medium-sized businesses who are likely doing everything manually. And if you can save these small teams small amounts of time across loads of tasks, they're going to love you. And I know there's someone called Andrew Davidson. I give him a shout out. He's got an agency called Luhu, who just does automation work for small to medium-sized companies, and he's killing it.
That's a great business.
Such a big opportunity, because there's so many people who've never even heard of like these automation tools. Like, even the people who you'd expect to have thought have everything automated don't. So yeah, giant opportunity. I wanted to just mention one thing about the advantage of no code, which just popped back up to me when you were talking last, was the ability to like hand off these projects if you're building them for somebody else. So let's say you're building a solution for a company, and if you're doing it with like a code base, you do all this custom development, you hand it off and you say, okay, job done. Like, there you go, like, pay my invoice. But then they have to like keep on coming back to you for changes, and you're the only one who could like figure out like how to like amend the code base, add some custom features, and then redeploy. You're getting charged by the hour. It's ridiculous, and the client has no idea what's going on. Whereas with these tools, you're building everything visually, so you can actually provide the education to hand off the project if it's like a client build and say, look, this is how this works. This is how you can change it. Here's the login. If you need any help, like, let me know, but you should be able to do it all yourself. And that is like a game changer.
That's huge. I mean, even on the most basic of creative jobs, like you make a website for someone and you have to stay on retainer for 5 years in case they ever need a headline changed on the website or something. It's just absolute. And the technical debt that builds up across like even 3 or 4 projects, when you have these, like, anyone can call you in any day and say like, hey, can you adjust this thing? I think that, again, is another like massively underestimated advantage of like building in tools that people are proficient enough in to make changes themselves, which everybody gets.
Or you
everybody
can
wins.
teach them, or you can teach them how to use. Like,
right,
they're just going to, if they have the ability to drag and drop a file from one part of the computer to another can understand like most of these tools, or you can do them in a way that they can. And so, yeah. And also, like, you don't want to be on a retainer for 5 years, because once you've done a project, like, it's just a pain in the ass to keep on going back to the same project. Like, you want to be done with it and like on to the next thing.
Yeah, agreed. By the way, if anyone has questions for Tom, drop them in the chat and we'll get back to them in about 10, 15 minutes. I also wanted to ask you about obviously the gap is closing between what can be accomplished with and without code. What exists in that gap now, and what do you think is kind of on its way to being rolled into the no code space?
Yeah, I think any platform which allows like custom development to happen. So anyone which gives like developers the option to write custom code into the platform and create like custom components is great. I don't think the like platform lock-in model is going to stand up for too long. Of course, you got like Bubble, which has like a big plugin library, which is great. You can build like custom plugins to amend like functionality. I think there's going to be a real influx of like product studios where it's like a no coder who might be able to like sell it and talk about a solution, might be able to automate some stuff and get like 80% of the way, which is great. Partnered up with somebody who is technical, like is a legit engineer who can then add that custom functionality to get that extra 10-20% in, like should they require it. I think that's going to be really important, because one of the blockers within the space at the moment is people selling like sell the dream, no code, really cheap, really quick, here you go, bish bash bosh, and then project done, you go, oh, by the way, can you just add like this functionality? And you're like,
yeah,
like the platform they haven't got a module for that, so I can't just like drag and drop it in. You're like, oh no. So then what do you do? Like, if you built on a platform which is completely locked in, you can't customize it, or you can't like add some custom code to it, like you're screwed, aren't you? Like, really. They just have to find somebody else, and they're probably going to go and find a developer, and they're going to say, oh, okay, you built it in this platform, we're going to have to rebuild it. So I think, especially if you're doing work for clients, you need to build like on the platforms which allow for that like low code option. If you needed to supplement it with a bit of code, that's the way to go.
Yeah, you know what? As you're talking, it is also interesting. Is no code sort of creates or injects a ton of energy into like the agency economy too. I think the entrepreneur is like, I'm going to use this thing to build my business, but there's also a huge opportunity for an agency operator, as you said, to be like, hey, we work with small accounting firms to like automate their client onboarding and their quarterly check-ins and the distribution of documents. I think that's huge. And I think, I don't know if you're seeing that in Makerpad, like client run no code businesses, but to me, that seems like a massive, massive opportunity.
Yeah, we're seeing a few like unique things. We're seeing people serving niches, because like with this you can target like micro niches. So people building like no code communities just for accountants, and just serving like they just serve 50 accountants. They build like the site, they build like the core automations, and a lot of this stuff is like building it once and reapplying it, like copy and pasting it over to another client. So, okay, you use this CRM, use this sales software, you use Gmail, so let's just like tie this to this, like to this, and it's the same thing. So that's really interesting. And obviously there's loads of accountants, so that's an easy one. There's like, yeah, the product studios, which are going to be good, which can build out MVPs like really quickly for either themselves, like self-published products are going to be really interesting, because you can test so many ideas really quickly. But also they're building out products for clients. You won't need to have to bring in like teams of designers, developers, and have scrums and all this nonsense. You can just like build it out really quick, get it tested, and then just iterate fast. So we're seeing that. We're also seeing designers being like empowered to actually build like the app side as well. So if you're using something
Mm.
like Webflow, which is like a designer's dream, you're getting like the CMS functionality as well, and combine that with some automations that you can like dynamically add data into your Webflow CMS, which dynamically creates pages on your site. That's like a dream. You don't have to redesign every page. That's
Mm.
also like another advantage for designers is no code apps at the moment are pretty bad looking. Like unless you're using, because they're done with constraints in mind, because they're done for like non-technical people, you want to, rather than like a blank canvas, it needs to be
Right.
like component based. So like just drop this component on the canvas and it'll like snap into place and do all the stuff. Whereas I think most people fall down a bit when it comes to that open canvas, so they end up like
Right.
creating these monstrosities. So there's a lot of room to improve on that front as well. And also, yeah, probably a few products you made from designers.
Yeah, I think that's like, I'm always just blown away by anybody who has those two skills layered. We had James Traff on a while ago. Do you know James Traff
What a
is?
guy. Amazing.
Unbelievable talent and designer and front end developer. It's just like an absolute monstrous combination. It's just unstoppable.
It's crushed it with Super.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. I know that they're writing custom code with that, but it is like the end result is an incredible no code tool, right? Which I think all of this points to that same trend of, essentially letting people do what they're good at and what can't be automated. The businesses that didn't have access to, hire a developer to, spend 500 grand building something, or like pivot to some software model. It's like you can add all of this like componentry to just give you back the time to do the thing that you're great at. And I think it's particularly like fascinating for creators and solo business operators and little agencies. And there's a lot of opportunity there. It's cool.
Yeah, the creators are really interesting because we're going through the big boom in the creator economy now. I'm sure like obviously you're seeing it firsthand, is now you can do so much more with so much less. So if you're using all these tools effectively, you're pushing the need for additional bodies so much further down the road that you can get to like this really nice place, but with really low stress. As long as you've got all the processes and systems working together effectively, like you don't need to be spending like all of this money on like hiring bodies and adding all this stuff, all this like unnecessary process and time delegation and all this. Just well, you know how much problems that causes. So if you can use these effectively, one, you just get all your time back, and two, it allows you to scale like much even past what like a human could do. Because let's say you had 1,000 people enroll for a course, and previously you were enrolling each of them manually from say Teachable into Circle, which is like an example we worked on.
Right.
Previously, it would take the course manager 20 hours to enroll like 300 people from like email, like a WooCommerce receipt, into Teachable, into Circle where the community lives. Like 20 hours, that's gone. That's a whole day. That's a lot of time. Once it's automated, all that time's back. So yeah, creators are living the dream right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And again, it's one of those, you gave those two examples earlier, but it is that epiphany moment of like, is this busy work I'm doing, or is this like, do I actually need somebody to come in and fill this role? Which in the age of software, a lot of those roles are replaceable by a couple of little widgets, which is a crazy thing to reckon with, because then I think it puts the pressure back on you to be like, okay, I just need to do this more intelligently. Like hiring a person in, a lot of instances is a reflection of your inability to produce a system rather than a necessity to have somebody else contributing. Like if they're coming on to write content or record video, or, there's thousands of creative examples of where people make a ton of sense, but there's also thousands of examples where you just hire them because you can't figure it out.
Yeah, there's like some really interesting like edge cases where I always think about, because I'd like to automate everything. Consider myself probably one of the laziest people in the world when it comes to like doing stuff. Like if it can be automated, I'm definitely going to try and automate it. If even if it takes me a day, I'm gonna automate it. So there's like a really unique one with like tutorial making. So I make like video tutorials, which will be like me like building something on the screen, like pointing, clicking, drag and dropping, and then like speaking about what I'm doing. Now I'm thinking, well, with Descript, like now I don't have to use an editor because I can edit it myself by just like selecting words and deleting, and it edits the video automatically. Like, great, okay, done. But like, do I even need to speak? Like they have a feature called overdub, which basically you record 90 minutes of your voice in Descript and they can reproduce your voice based off what the text is. So I'm like, I might be able to like automate myself with tech like out of a job and just say, okay, like here, I want this tutorial doing. Can you like record it? And like when you record it, I can just use that text and then overdub my voice instead of your voice. I'm like, great, I don't have to do it anymore. Brilliant.
Yeah, and like this comes back to what we were talking about at the start of the conversation. This idea that the word no code has just got this baggage that keeps, or not baggage, just this connotation that keeps people from realizing the upside that they aren't tapping, right? It's like if you avoid the space of no code because you have no desire to build an app in the app store, which I think is how a lot of people think about it. At least it was how I thought about it for a long time. Then you never stumble across these solutions, and your business is just stuck at this very low ceiling because you refuse to, or you're unaware of the potential that you can unlock by just exploring this space and trying a few experiments. I'm going to ask a few questions here.
I think the name.
Go on.
I think the name is also a bit of a blocker. Like the name No Code is like, we probably do like a better name. I think that doesn't really do any favors because like you're producing code. You're just not writing it. So everything you do produces code on the back end. It's just like abstracted one more layer.
Yeah. Well, let's think about that, Tom. I'll give it a new name. So we got a couple of questions here. Here's a real specific question about automation. Do you have any automated data entry from Facebook/Google Ads to a Google Sheet, then to Google Data Studio? I've tried Zapier, but it doesn't always work. Supermetrics is expensive.
Yeah, I'd use Integromat for Facebook ad data. I think that's pretty good. There's like a bunch of others which can send you, but Integromat's really good. It's like cheaper per run. Also, I don't know if there's a good one which is like NAN, which has just come out, which is like an open source one, but I don't know if they have like a Facebook ads like module yet. And I think Parabola, but I don't know if Parabola have Facebook ads yet. I know Integromat's pretty comprehensive, so that's going to be a good place to start, and it'll be a lot cheaper for you.
All right.
If there's any other ones, I'll let you know.
Well, I'll stick it in the notes. Yeah, that's great. Here's a good one. How would you suggest spending 10 hours to understand no code and what's possible, so you'd have a good idea how to spend the next 50?
Build a website, a mobile app, and automate something. So pick like the simplest things. So maybe build a website in Card. Sorry, my brother's ringing me. 2 seconds.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I built a website in Card. That's like getting your website done. And with that, you can it's like so simple to get a website up. Then like automate like a form submission. That's like just automate that one bit. So form submission into like anything. Like it could be sending yourself an email, it could be into like a CRM. Then you can like start playing around with automations. Build a mobile app with Glide from a Google Sheet. Then I'd look at Adalo actually. Adalo is a really good one because you can build like a native mobile app and a web app, but sharing the same database and they're native rather than like a progressive web app, which just lives as like a download. You can't put it in the app store. Adalo is really good. And it's a bit more like open canvas based, whereas Glide is more constrained. So Glide's ace. I think everyone should start Glide because that's the biggest aha moment. And then from there, you can kind of like open it up to more open platforms. So I think website, mobile app, and automations, I think it's a good place to start. Once you've done those three, I would suggest maybe if you do have like more time to sink into it, then go into Bubble. Only saying, I think everyone should probably go through the initial learning period with Bubble, just because with Bubble you can build anything. There's pretty much like no restrictions on like the Bubble side, but it is like a higher learning curve, and it will take a bit of time, and you probably will bang your head against the wall for a bit. But I know they're working on like a new UI and stuff, so yeah, highly recommend that. There's also something called Build Camp by Gregory John, who's a Bubble wizard. Highly recommend that.
Very cool. Yeah, that was my experience with Bubble. I did it before the Zapier and all that stuff. I was like, what is this? But now I think if I went back to it, I have a bit of a better grasp.
Yeah, if you're a designer as well, you probably throw your screen out the window. Bubble.
Right. All right, what we got next? We've got, is there a good place to keep up to date with no-code solutions and a way to see independent reviews and feedback? If not, what's the quickest way to assess the effectiveness of a no-code solution?
So I have to say Makerpad, I think, is probably the best place, because, not being obviously biased, but there are loads of lists out there, which is great. But I think we do spend a lot of time like seeing the value of tools. We're not just going to add tools just because they can do a thing. We obviously grade them we like test them out, make sure they're actually legit. I think one of the problems is you could always like dive in and make stuff on any like new platform, but the problem is, are they going to be around for a while? And you want to build on something, especially if you're building like a personal project which you want to last. You don't want like the app to suddenly disappear. So maybe make sure you're building on something like a Webflow, which is rock solid, like well funded. You want to like just do a bit of like digging, because there are apps that have launched and then they stop being supported and then get annoying. So, but yeah, check out like any of the listing sites, and there is some good ones out there. Most people have like a list of no-code tools these days, so start poking around.
All right, solid. Yeah, Makerpad. I mean, you should be plugging it, man. That's the whole point, and bringing you on air as well. Is expose people to what you guys are building, which is badass.
That's it.
Andrew, your fellow Mancunian, asks, best automation tips for a welcome email or welcome sequence for when someone buys something from you online. What have you seen to work? Like making it personal, but also keeping it simple.
So I really like, I think personalized email is hard because, yeah, again, like you got the first name thing, which means like capturing the first name or the full name and then splitting it off and doing all that stuff. But I think that goes against like capturing email address as quickly as possible. I think you just want to capture the email address. If you do want to capture the first name, there is some cool things you can do to like personalize them with something like Banner Bear. So if you go to bannerbear.com, like you can like dynamically create images. So you say like if you're capturing, and it works with Zapier. So let's say you've got a form and you capture it in type form, for instance, and you have like, what's your first name, what's your last name, what's your email address, like where do you live? You could then pass those fields through using a Zap into a custom like template that you made in Banner Bear. And depending on what email provider you use, if you're using like something like MailerLite, which enables you to integrate stuff, you can pass that image like through into your email. So you can actually dynamically create an image with their name on it or where they live, or maybe if you're capturing like their avatar or their face, you can like add that into the image as well, add that into your email and send that email, and that'll be like witchcraft to them. Which is, yeah, I like that. But it's part of like customizing email. I think welcome sequences are tough just because you've got like limited information on the person. I think if you're putting people through a course, on the other hand, you can base your emails off of like what the user's done. So have they maybe done like lesson 1 or lesson 2, but not gone to lesson 3? They did like the first 2 within a day, and the second one and the third one they just didn't do. Then like based off of those rules, you can then like trigger trigger like another email campaign, which has some more like personalized options. But
that's cool. All those layers of logic and your suggestion about getting one automation going, and then the way your brain starts to connect the dots after you've figured out what's possible there. It's like it becomes almost a game of, okay, what else can I tie together? So I think experiencing that and at the lowest friction possible is a great gateway automation. Let's call it.
Yeah, I think email responders are great because they're like probably one of the best things to start with. Just like form automated email, like using Zapier to pass information through. It's just like a really, really easy place to start. I really like ConvertKit for stuff like this because it's like really simple, especially if you're a creator, to do simple landing page, simple form, has inbuilt automations and rules depending on like activity and tags and segments. So yeah, I like that. But yeah, I think Active Campaign was mentioned as well. It's probably a bit more heavy duty, depending on your email list size and the options you need. But yeah, both good.
Awesome, man. All right, we got someone's teeing you up here for a plug. What's this thing you're putting out on Gumroad?
Okay, so available for pre-order down to Jack because I felt so embarrassed that I actually put a product out there. Something I've been thinking about for a while is basically going to be 90 minutes of me dumping everything I know about no code, including all the tooling, all the opportunities for creators, for businesses, for consultants, for enterprise, some info about the market, what's going on, who's this going to be useful for, and then a bunch of people to follow and things like that. So yeah, that's my video. It's basically exactly what Jack mentioned about going from 0 to 1. You could go from knowing nothing about no code, and then the end of it, just like knowing where you're at, where you should start, depending on who you are, what you're trying to achieve, yada, yada, yada. So it's going to be that.
Awesome, man. Well, everybody go get that if you're interested in this. Bilal's question: are there use cases you wish you could tackle with no code solutions, but they aren't quite there yet, but you think are on the horizon in the next year or so?
Great question. Do you know what? I don't know, I think even things like two-sided marketplaces, this is another one that's really disrupted like the agency folk. Whereas with something like ShareTribe, another tool, a tip, ShareTribe, you can build a two-sided marketplace out of the box in like 15 minutes with like user accounts, payments, messaging, really easy.
So, just sorry to interrupt, I'm going to inject with a layman question here. So this is like an Airbnb style thing, right? Where you're just connecting two parties and facilitating a transaction, right?
Exactly. Which means that you can now build two-sided marketplaces for £0. So they got like a 30-day trial period. And then if you haven't built your marketplace in 30 days, they'll just extend it for you. So you can build a two-sided marketplace for free for like a micro niche. So you can, because it's cost you £0 to build it, you can target the most micro niche. You don't have to do an Airbnb where they said, okay, we need all of these people to even have a viable business. You could sell, I don't know, let's think of something, space in an equestrian center, like in Derby.
Right.
Like, okay, equestrian centers in Derby.com. I'm gonna use this. The whole thing's automated. It cost me £0. Like, great. Let's use that. So that's really interesting. I think it would cost like 60 to 100 grand to get that built through a dev house or something. No, it costs zero. As far as like solutions that aren't quite there yet, I think anything intelligent, as in we do a really good job of like, if this, then that sort of logic with like Zapier, and okay, you can do like different flows within Integromat and tools where depending on the result previously, it goes off in different directions, or maybe sends to like adds to another folder or sends it to somebody else. But I think using some more like intelligent tools like machine learning tools or like image categorization, and then doing a different thing based off of the previous result is coming on leaps and bounds at the moment. There's tools like Levity, which is basically a no code AI solution, which you can do. You can train models to recognize images. So you could say, here's 10,000 pictures of golden retrievers, and every time you fire a dog in, if it's a golden retriever, it gets like plucked out. But you can use it for like documents. So give me 1,000 mortgage deeds, and you could train the model on that. And then every time it sees a mortgage deed, it does something. Everything that isn't a mortgage deed, it does something else. So then you can train it based off that. That's going to be like commonplace. I think most projects will have this integrated at some sort. So they're going to be, much more intelligent flows.
Awesome, man. I have a question based on our whole conversation. What do you think is a high leverage skill that people who are already deep into the no code space lack or could work on?
I think probably like packaging and selling. I think you'll find, and then selling either by speaking like on a call, like selling online, like face to face. I have like a recruitment wanker background, so I'm used to like speaking to people on the phone and getting told to fuck off 100 times a day. So like that, but that's like, selling is hard. It's like really, really hard. So I think there's so many people who now have like this unreal armory of skills, but actually, again, what you alluded to, Jack, is actually like packaging them up and selling something.
Right.
Like something I've not done. Like I don't sell anything online. Like probably should package up this knowledge and start selling some products. But actually packaging up your offering, going narrow and selling it to like your accountants. Okay, here's something which is useful for accountants. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to ring an accountant and I'm going to sell them, or I'm going to write a good pack of information into a document which I can send over and over and over again to 100 accountants, and I'm going to sell this service. I think it's easy to like talk about all the things that are possible, but to actually like package them up and deliver them as a product is again like such an important skill to know, and it's an easy one to like skip over and not do.
That's the exact answer I was hoping you were going to give, but like that idea to me is people think of those as competing skill sets, right? Or I'm that type of person, or I'm this type of person. I don't believe that's true, but I think it's very easy to get conditioned that way based on the way job descriptions are written and what you do in organizations or on teams or things of that nature. And obviously, those two skills together are so lethal, and vice versa, right? People who are good salespeople and marketers and can package something up, if you can like cobble together a bit of a build of something, then you're just going to be unstoppable. So that's awesome, man.
I think it's also like confidence as well. It's like, people always like underestimate like their own abilities, and they overestimate like what other people know. It's like there's that like nice visual. I'm sure, I guess you've probably done one of these before, but it's like what you think you know, and like what everybody else knows, and but like what everybody else actually knows, and then just like two separate things. So I think knowing that, even like in this whole like world online, is you just assume people know everything. Like they don't.
Right.
Full stop.
Yeah, that's great. And the small amount of action you can take to prove something with a tool like this is remarkable. We have one more question on a specific tool. Do you use obviously.ai? If so, what have you used it for?
So obviously AI is really good for, I think the use case they push most commonly is like predicting customer behavior based off of like data. So if you have a SaaS business, it's great for like churn. So if you're running like subscription payments and you have information based off of like who your member is, who your customer is, like where they live, what their income, like how long have they been a member, what was their activity within the app, like how many contact points did you have like in the community? So and then based off of that data, they can predict who the people are that are most likely to churn, and also what the personas are that are most likely to respond or most likely to sign up. So you could say, okay, I've got this group of people. I've got 100 people who are aged between 43 and 50. They live in this part of the world. They have like this income level. They're online like 3 or 4 times a week, and they do this behavior. Then based off of that, you can then go and target other people like within that niche, and it will automatically pull out the personas, and you can test personas against your models, which is really interesting. And it will actually just bring back individuals saying there's a 95% chance this person will churn in the next 2 months. So you can actually just go and deliver like more information. So just maybe like a manual check-in, like, hey, how are you getting on? Do you need any more help? It just, especially within businesses, it may not be good if you've got like tiny amounts of data that you could still use it. But once you get to a stage where you can't like manually interact with everybody, I think it's good to have something like this, so you can actually just surface the people that need the attention, rather than like just trying to like blanket communicate with everybody the same, because everyone needs different levels of attention in all businesses, in all communities, etc. So yeah, SaaS companies, like, that's a no-brainer for obviously.
That's awesome, man. Well, mate, we went over slightly, but this has been an enlightening conversation, Tom. Thank you, mate.
No worries. It's been a pleasure.
Where
Thanks for having me.
can everyone get you on the internet?
Mostly on Twitter, just at Tom Osman. That's where I spend most of my day, or tomosman.com. And then apart from that, inside of the Makerpad community.
And watch out for that Gumroad product too.
That's it.
All right, mate.
First of many, hopefully.
I appreciate it, mate. And congrats on the new house. And we'll be in touch, man. It'd be great to get you back on for an update on all things no code in the future. I loved it. I hope everyone else got some value. So nice one.
Let me know how you get on with all your automations, and if there's anything funky we can drum up.
There will be, mate. There will be plenty of funky stuff happening.
Nice.
All right, mate. Nice one.
Thanks, everyone.
In a bit. Cheers.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.